Good morning. I'm Malcolm Borg. I'm an URBACT expert and also have in the past 10 years managed and coordinated URBACT projects. For this URBACT Info Day, I was asked to give an idea of the contribution of URBACT to EU funding programs in Malta and how we used URBACT as a planning tool. There were three main projects which were developed in the recent years from 2009 to today, which I will go through. One of them is URBACT Repair with Paola Local Council. Then there's URBACT Hero with Valletta Local Council. And now we're actually developing Mobile CityNet with the Southeast region. In this presentation, I will show you how we used URBACT to integrate plans, how we use these plans for the future, the principle of subsidiarity, which is actually developed even further through not only the Local Councils Act, but also through URBACT itself, the principle of democratization through planning, and spin-off projects which will help local councils in the long term. URBACT Repair was a complex project. The idea behind it was to realize the potential of abandoned military sites as an integral part of sustainable urban community regeneration. For this project, Paolo Local Council actually earmarked Corradino lines, which extend for about 2.5 kilometers around the Corradino Hill. The idea here was to develop projects to make this area regenerated and also dynamically connected with Paola Center. The main project areas were, as the schema of URBACT is usually, a baseline study, which looked at the area itself and the impacts on it. It looked also at different plans for the area, including local council, MEPA local plans, and strategic plans. Also best practice examples from the other partners, experience and exchange workshops which were developed during the thematic development. Then there was also common policy and guidelines developed by the partners, and Paola was leading by example. And in fact, because of the already developed plan, Paola was selected with Florence as one of the pilot projects, which was then presented in Lille a year later. The URBACT Repair Plan saw the development of urban local support groups, which were formed as part of the schema of the URBACT idea of how to develop a project. Urban local support groups were a first in Malta. It was a way of actually developing projects in tandem with the local community and in collaboration with the local community, and therefore the ULSG were actually composed of representatives of voluntary organizations in Paola and Paola councillors, and also representatives of the council. This was led by the project manager, obviously, and the project coordinator. And something interesting that happened with URBACT Repair is that Paola Heritage Foundation was formed as the ULSG. So the ULSG actually gave rise to a voluntary organization which is still active and developing projects in tandem and in collaboration with the Paola Local Council. In the Paula case, we also saw a number of flagship projects that developed with the action plan, and the flagship projects were listed as priority areas and priority projects for the 5 years from the implementation and the development of the action plan itself. The action plan has been reactivated and is still active till now. There was 100% commitment from the local council on most of the flagship projects. In fact, 85% of those listed were developed. We had the ESF 3110, which was a series of courses for prison inmates, to actually find jobs. There was the Prison Museum, another extensive project which saw the restoration of 2 wings at Fort and Hillbrit Parks projects, which were directed at the further development of parks and gardens. And through COSME, we actually developed Linking the Lines, which was the tourism pillar, and which saw the heritage trail being activated as a digitized heritage trail. We move on to HERO. URBACT HERO. HERO was developed as Heritage as an Opportunity, as a team. The idea was the CHIMP, the Cultural Heritage Integrated Plan. The CHIMP was organized mainly with other local councils which were actually managing cities with World Heritage status, like Valletta. Valletta actually selected the Marsamxett area, which was really needy at the time, which really necessitated a plan, and therefore an action plan was developed to target that area. Here also, in this case, an urban local support group was formed. This was actually formed by VOs and the business community representatives and Valletta Local Council. There was a system of public participation too, through a surveying questionnaire involving about 50 to 60% of the community. And we also established flagship projects with private and public intervention in the area. Here also there was 100% commitment from the local council. Flagship projects were actually developed, and here we saw the Peacock Gardens being redeveloped and regenerated as a CULTS project for cultural heritage landscapes for World Heritage. Here in connection with the Museum for Fortifications, there will be a gateway to Valletta when these two will be actually activated altogether. We also had St. Augustine as a private project. St. Augustine were proposing a regeneration of the Interpretation Center. The project is still going. There were also private entrepreneurs interested in the area. A boutique hotel was also developed with the idea of injecting sort of niche tourism in the area and business. And ERDF and other funds were used for public areas upgrade in Marsamxett area. And therefore the URBACT HERO project also substantially helped in developing and giving a framework to the development in the area. Last but not least, the last contribution of URBACT to local planning, this time in transit, is the mobile city net. We were actually approached by the Ombudsman for the Environment to take interest into shared spaces. For CERC, after being approached on shared spaces by the local agency, we actually met the representative of the Ombudsman's Office for the Environment, Perit Paul Patch, who led us to his idea, and we actually, together with the president of the Southeast region, Paul Farrugia, and the secretary, we actually gave an exposition of our ideas on how we can actually finance and fund shared spaces through SUMPs, Sustainable Urban Mobility Plans. It was interesting that CERC, the Southeast region, regional committee, had already developed an action plan for the Southeast region, which was following UN principles, UN Global Concept City Principles. One of the pillars of this plan was the efficient mobility and access, obviously looking into especially commercial areas and industrial areas. Based on that, Tarshin and Paula had already developed SUMPs for their areas, on the areas and their environs, which were highly favored by Malta Transport. In fact, Transport Malta had given already Paula 10,000 for the SUMP compilation, and Tarshin also was given a nomination for the same SUMP, for a SUMP related to it. These two SUMPs were the backbone of the plan which we presented to, apart from the action plan, the main action plan of the Southeast region. The SUMPs were also integrated and given as an action plan, as a separate action plan, or as a sub-action plan to the lead partner. The lead partner recognized not only the readiness of Southeast region, but also the advanced way of developing the SUMPs, and therefore in line with the activities designed for that specific project, the thematic project, the Mobile City Net, and therefore CERC was accepted as a partner. The project was also important because it's not only integrating transit ideas, SUMP ideas, but also it integrates most of the councils in the area, 15 councils in the region, and therefore it's quite extensive. Apart from being extensive, it is also catering for a diverse number of clients within the area, and it is hoping to transform certain transport ideas and certain transport usage into, and effectively developing greater mobility and greater accessibility through mobility shifts. This helped in not only the recognition, but also the readiness of the project. The readiness of the project was there also because the Urban Local Support Group had already been formed, even at this stage where there were meetings with the thematic expert from abroad. The thematic expert already had meetings with the various stakeholders which were going to form the Urban Local Support Group. This included government agencies, MT, the Council for the South, and the councils themselves. But there was also the design of actually including public participation and questionnaires from the stakeholders level, but also from the public in general, as this was a client base approach, and therefore the clients, the public in general, had to be included in the consultation process. The ULSG will be leading the SAMP development, and there is targeted also private and public participation through the development. Therefore, in this case, URBACT is also substantially redeveloping and reproposing ways of governance on the regional level this time, and also planning for the region. URBACT has contributed significantly, I think, in the past years for integrated planning and integrated governance. It definitely gave good examples through these three examples, definitely, in Paola, Valletta, and the Southeast region, whereby integrated plans were no longer top-down approach, but bottom-up, where councils in the region are now leading and trying to develop projects themselves, using, obviously, and based upon local plans and strategies developed by MEPA earlier on. And instead of moving away from already developed principles, using those principles and developing further those ideas, objectives, and aims to develop projects following also priority access. This is a very important and was always important in all the projects, that the projects are actually, the platform for the projects are the priority access themselves, and therefore those elements and those priorities in the plans for and priorities for the central government are actually integrated in the projects themselves and part of the pillars of the action plans themselves. And through that, develop multi-speed projects to assist in taking the action plans from a short-term level to a long-term level. And I think this is one of the most important strategic areas that I think Malta should be looking at significantly. There's no short-term solution to long-term impacts. Transit is one of them, as we have seen in the Southeast regional situation. However, with URBACT, there are other things that have been significant, I think, and have changed the way of looking at things locally. One of them is the principle of subsidiarity. The principle of subsidiarity, as you know, is one of the key principles of the Local Government Act, the Local Councils Act, and therefore should be further spurred and should spearhead most of the projects. With regards to URBACT, it helped local councils to get on top of this and actually start actuating projects led by local government and not by central government. This is, I think, an important principle and should be activated further. Apart from that, in the three projects we saw the principle of public consultation and public participation as an important and key element in the ULSG, but not only on the formation of the ULSG, but on how to drive the ULSG and the principles coming out of the ULSG, and actually to transpose those in design. I think the examples from Valletta, Paola, and Cirque, Southeast region, are ideal in the sense that we saw how design can be actually influenced by the community, how heritage management can be influenced by the city itself and the citizens, and how citizens actually can influence and develop transit mobility plans themselves. These projects were key to other projects, spin-off projects, and therefore URBACT also was important in actually creating a platform for projects in the future, especially those being funded by the EU. This was crucial for local councils to actually activate their projects and finding funding, which is the most important thing for any project, for it, and therefore seeing projects from planning stage to implementation stage being developed and coordinated by the local councils and regional councils. I thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, please do forward them to the Secretariat and the organizers. Thank you.